right, we are live. Welcome everybody to our summertime pop culture pastors hour, which we are thrilled to bring to you all. And as you can see, we've got a group of three. The Three Musketeers are here, and I will just say hi, Ed. And Ed, introduce us to our special guest, who is someone that you have known, and both of us have been reading his Substack. So give us a little background, and then we'll dive right into Superman.
Great. So, well, it's good to be back with you all here. So yes, our we have a special guest this morning, Fu Lu. Fu is a Houston resident, and I got connected with him through a common friend and through his first book, which is called Jesus of the wait in and the
Yeah,
of the East.
after
Yeah,
this.
and it is an absolutely phenomenal dive into aspects of Jesus that, frankly, we don't give enough attention to, and it's just a powerful, powerful book. And so, so I've kind of been following Fu's work, especially on a Substack recently, and he is a writer, a painter, and a book coach living in Houston. And this morning he shared this really terrific reflection on the newest Superman movie and its connection to toxic masculinity. Um, and so, yeah, his page on Substack is called People of the Way. So if you want to look that up and start to follow him, it is really worth the read. So, Fu, you want to say hello or anything of that sort to get going here?
Well, thank you so much, Ed and MaryAnn, for inviting me on this Substack podcast. And I've enjoyed your work, and I think the first time I got onto your pop culture talk was with talking about Andor and that series. You guys did phenomenal work there, and I was watching the end of Andor and just blown away by it also. So, and now I get to be here and join y'all. So
Great,
thank you.
Yes.
great,
Thank
great.
you so much. And Fu also has a second book that came out, and the paperback version is coming out in just a couple days. And I want to give you a chance to talk about that. Fu, tell us about
Yeah.
that next book.
Yeah. It's called Jesus and Buddha Talk About Suffering, a Desire, Suffering, and Happiness. And it's a fictional dialogue, imaginary dialogue between Jesus and Buddha, talking about these three really important themes and just diving into it. And I thought, hey, these are important ideas that often are not usually talked about in Christian circles. Our desires, how they may or may not lead to suffering and happiness. And so, yeah, that is
That's
the
great.
book.
Wonderful. Um, so we could geek out about Texas stuff, and I won't, except to ask if you know, I don't know if you know the music of Ray Wiley Hubbard. He may not actually be a Texan, but that's where I first discovered his work. He has a song called, I think it's called Conversations with the Devil. And it's a takeoff of the Charlie Daniels band Devil Went Down to Georgia. And he asks the devil, which religion is the truest? And the devil says, well, they're all about the same. Buddha wasn't a Christian, but Jesus would have made a good Buddhist. So anyway, just a little side note. So look up that song
Yeah,
if you'd like. It's
yes.
quite charming.
Well,
So why don't we dive in? What we're here for is the Man of Steel himself, Superman, and maybe what we could just start with is I'd be curious with each of you, what is your connection to Superman? Is that something that you read or have really done a lot of dive into his story, whether through the TV shows or the movies? And I'll just start and say I'm fairly certain that Superman, the Richard Donner, 1978, is the first movie I ever saw in the movie theater, and I think I went with, like, I don't remember when it came out, but I have a recollection of going with a group of little friends, maybe for a birthday party or something, and I remember being quite blown away by it. I'm not super into, Superman lore, but I do try to catch the movies when I can. I didn't do the kind of Justice League, Man of Steel kinda era, but I did watch the Brandon Routh, Superman movie. And so I'm not a diehard fan, but I do like, if the movie's good, I wanna go try to see it. So how about you, Ed? What's your kinda Superman origin story?
So, like you, I don't know. It would have been one of the earlier movies that I saw in the theater, I'm pretty sure. I do remember more seeing Superman 2 and
Mm,
just being like the whole General Zod and the whole thing, just like that movie was completely memorable for me.
yeah.
And just loved it, and loved seeing actually the Donner cut of that when it came out a couple years ago, which was great. It was like seeing it brand new. Um, but most of my Superman connection has been through the movies as well as the Super Friends cartoon. Um, that, was the Saturday morning or whenever it was cartoon, that I saw growing up. I never really did as much of the comic book guy as I was. I was always a Marvel guy, and so I didn't do much in terms of Superman comics for the most part. But kind of like Marianne, I did most of the movies until yeah, I saw the Brandon Routh one, but like the Batman versus Superman one and stuff, it just looked way too just bleak
Mhm.
for me, and so I just didn't even see it.
Yeah.
Uh, but this one had a different sense, and I think I watched some episodes of Lois and Clark and Smallville and things like that, but never jumped deeply into them. So,
Mhm. That's
yeah.
great. Yeah. How about you, Fu?
Yeah, so grew up with Superman. I mentioned this a little bit on my Substack article. I did not see any of the movies in the theater. I I saw them when they came out on TV. So all my memories were on the TV. Think the first time I went to a theater was when I saw The Empire Strikes Back. And that
Oh,
was the first time. So, but Superman. So I came to the United States with my family at the age of 4, and one of the memories I had was because my parents owned a convenience store. They would get magazines on a shelf, and in '78, which was when Superman the movie came out, there were the magazine covers that had Superman. And one memory I had as a 8-year-old kid was taking a magazine from the shelf and taking a paper grocery bag, one of those big paper grocery bags on the back, getting out the map colors and drawing the picture of Superman on the bag and copying it. And that was where I sort of discovered this love of art, because I could pretty much draw pretty pretty representational um, images, and grew up on Superman watching the black and white series, uh, uh, starring George Reed. And then, yes, you remind me, Ed, of the Super Friends cartoons that I love. So, but then I really never saw myself in the Man of Steel, the character. I was always sort of drawn to Batman instead. And then who is dark, brooding, had this sort of traumatic backstory, and not into, have seen all the Superman movies, but not into this Superman, this version, that I really connected again with the character.
mm. Hmm, fascinating.
Yes. Hmm.
Huh. Yeah, he's such an interesting character. because he's, I mean, many of us have heard the kind of controversy, or I don't know, trumped up controversy, pun very much intended, around Superman is an immigrant and that this is somehow now a woke story. Um, and so he is an interesting contrast, right? Because he is um, an immigrant as to the extreme, right, from a different planet,
Yeah.
but he also grew
Illegal
up in
alien.
exactly, right? Yeah, let's just put a really fine point on it, but also grew up in Smallville, Kansas, and has this, so he has both aspects of himself. So maybe there's ways that we can relate to him very strongly, and other ways that he is very different from our respective experiences, whether we were born in the United States or not. It's an interesting entry points, but anyway.
Mhm.
Um, so, what we typically do with this, and this is our first time with three, is we kind of bounce around with just a little nugget or just some kind of theme that each of us kind of resonated with. And Ed, I think I want to start with you because you just mentioned the not, we'll start a little bit just fun and then go deep, but the whole Cincinnati of it all. So tell us how you experienced that as a as an Ohio native, because it was filmed there, right?
So just real quick. So I'm a resident of Ohio. I'm a
Okay.
Colorado native. So that's just sort of,
Okay.
it's like I've experienced like Texans sometimes do the
Yeah.
same thing. Like I live in Virginia, but I'm from Texas. So anyway,
For sure. For
so
sure.
so Ohio resident. But yeah, the thing about a year and a half or so ago, they huge deal about closing down the Cincinnati Museum Center for like a week while they were doing filming for this new Superman. Um, and so, I mean, it shows up for like 5 minutes of the film, but the entirety of the uh, Hall of Justice scene is filmed exterior and interior in the Cincinnati Museum Center, which is this stunning architecture. And really cool thing with it was, I mean, there's some CG and things that they did, but it's all very subtle. It's almost exactly like it is. So if you went to the Cincinnati Museum Center today and walked into that inside, the only thing that would have been different is that there's a lot more stuff in there and the mural that's in the background is different. But like
Fascinating. How fun.
everything else is like exactly. And so when we saw it in the theater, there was this like little murmur and rumble from everybody, of like, oh, there
That's
it is.
great.
Yeah.
How fun.
So anyway, um yeah, and, the other thing I will just say that this did was there were the points where they kept just those connections back to things. The John Williams theme was in this one, which I don't remember it being in the Brandon Routh one, and my guess is it probably wasn't in the Batman v Superman one, but there was like that was like this, but it had like an electric guitar edge to it,
Mm. Mhm.
But that kind of was this thing that was this message of like, I'm bringing something back. I'm going
Mhm.
back to something. And so I thought that was really great.
Mhm.
And did send a subtle, maybe not so subtle message about
Yeah.
what this film was going to be.
Mhm. Yeah. I love that. I love that. And, um, I'll piggyback on that, and then we'll, kick it over to Phu, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about the post that you shared this morning, and when I post this on my own page, later, the recording, I'll make sure to link to that. But one of the things that I had already kinda heard about going into the movie was the whole issue around, and I have a post about this because I preached about it a couple weeks ago, the whole idea of Superman's trunks and the fact that he wears these bright colors, right? And, the idea behind that being that Superman, who is all just almost invincible, right? Except he has a couple of weaknesses. He is so powerful that he wants to also be approachable. And so he wears these kind of silly looking, and they have a reason they were tied back to kind of wrestling and strongman kind of archetypes from when Superman was first kind of envisioned and created. Um, but I love the idea of Superman who is so secure in himself that he risks looking a little silly just so that, and I've heard the actor David Corenswet talk about this, that like, um, I don't want kids to be afraid, to approach me, or Superman doesn't want kids to be afraid to approach him and say, "Can you help me? Can you help me get my cat out of the tree?" And so a strength that comes with a self-confidence that doesn't have to brag or doesn't have to be sucked up to. Um, and I think that connects, Fu, to what you were writing this morning about masculinity and healthy masculinity. I wondered if you just wanted to
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit.
No, that's great. Right. I'm glad you could write an article emphasizing the underwear, right? That he
Right.
wears the underwear on the outside.
Right, right.
Yeah, that says so much. I guess I start off the article talking about how those who are uh, the most harsh, the most heavy-handed, the most, can I say the word ass Polish
Of
on the
course.
outside have uh, so much to protect, right?
Mm.
They are showing their vulnerability, and so we could take examples, from the media where people are just out there, just not just being horrible to other people, being angry, being brash, and it just shows the insecurity, like you said. Uh,
Yeah.
And so here you have someone who is secure enough to not care about being ridiculed, not care of um, just saying, no, this is who I am. I'm inviting children to come up to me and not be scared. So a very different take than what we have in the previous depictions of Superman. We're talking about, Superman v uh, Batman and the Zack Snyder depictions of
Mhm.
Superman. And I think a lot of that comes from a need to portray the male image in a way that again, somehow is has to be alpha, has to be strong, has to be give that air of security all the time. And I understand that need because w- speaking for guys, that's part of our evolutionary trait, right? Without those characteristics, those ideas of dominance, of strength, of power, even being an asshole, somehow those genes help propagate the species, right? So in a way, like some of us couldn't be here, if we didn't have that. But what has went wrong is that we as guys have not figured out ourselves without those traits, right? And it's got to a point where those things have not been helpful for us, have
Mhm.
not brought us to what we need to be and to grow to be. And so uh, guys will get to a point where they're using all those traits, but then w- when those things are not useful, when their friends leave them, or when they get fired from their job, or when they get angry and blow up and become abusive, then what do you guys have
Mhm.
left?
Yeah.
Okay, and
Right.
and so that's what I'm trying to get at, and so the vulnerability piece, the kindness, the just And even talks about the connection with the world. That's the deeper stuff that can carry us and help us to flourish as individuals.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. Ed,
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah. I interestingly though, like I loved in this that Superman had some of those definite, the say evolved traits, but also there was this sense of he was still throughout the movie trying to figure out who he was.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
And like that whole dialogue with him and Lois early on, um, like it even like the shy kind of admitting that he sometimes checks social media.
right.
Um,
Yes.
was I think this sense of like he's still trying to figure out who he is.
Mhm.
And um and I feel like that's one thing that all people need to be working on, is kind of getting that sense of who we are as people. Um, what baggage are we carrying? What blessings do we have? Like all of that. But I think there is a traditional sense that is kind of given, I think, to males that, you don't need to explore that. You just kind of keep pushing through. You keep pushing
Yeah,
through.
yeah,
And I just got done listening to this podcast from the Noiser Network that was all about D-Day, and they had several episodes that were pretty much devoted exclusively to how, like World War II soldiers, they were not given the opportunity to really process what they experienced, the trauma of what they experienced, and PTSD was laughed off, like it was, that, and so. Yeah, that to me, there was this, again, a very different perspective of Superman,
mhm,
with this that, he was at the same time confident and strong, like, "I'm gonna go and stop this war because I can."
yeah, yeah,
Um, but also "I don't know who I am."
mhm, yeah.
Um,
I'm
yeah.
I'm curious your thoughts, both of you, on this idea, because we have this interview where he's kind of trying to figure things out and he thinks it's going great, but it kind of reveals that he really doesn't know himself and quite have things figured out. And contrast that with the speech that he gives to Lex Luthor at the end of the movie. And I'm curious both of your thoughts on this. I've heard a couple of podcasts and people, reviewers, say they kind of didn't love that speech at the end because it maybe felt a little heavy-handed, like trust the audience to know that that's what Superman is feeling. He says, I'm, I worry and I doubt and I make the wrong decision and I'm doing my best and that's what makes me human and that's where my power comes from, is kind of in a nutshell. And some people were like, it felt kind of cheesy or a little cringy. Um, and I'm curious, like I can go both ways. It did feel a little like showing as opposed or telling instead of showing. But I also feel like what you both are saying is making me think that it was important for him to say that. And the fact that it is kind of cheesy and cringy is part of its power too. It's like, I need to declare this and make it clear that this is what power and strength and true masculinity looks like. So I don't know how you all felt about it in the theater or having reflected on it, what your responses were to that scene. Because that was like one of the few moments when people had quibbles with the movie. They were like, I don't know. So do either of you have thoughts on that?
So I loved it. I thought it was appropriate and fit given what we'd seen.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, I think it could have worked without it, but I feel like there was like this declaration of this recognition of, you know what? Yeah, I make mistakes. I screw up. Um, that was like this, no, I'm human too.
mhm. Yeah.
That might
Yeah.
even tie in a little bit with kind of the immigrant experience as well, that, it's not, I am not other, I am you.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I in writing and especially in fiction, I love the development of character almost more than plot.
Mm.
Plot is important, but trying to figure out the character motivation is as important or even more important because I okay, so we know Luther's motivation is envy, right? So he even says it, and he lives on envy because he is afraid that people like Superman will dominate the world and take human beings away or diminish the human race. Okay, and then his prophecy is fulfilled in a way, right? But with Superman, previous depictions is that besides growing up in small farm, having superpowers, we don't really know Superman's motivation. Like, why does he get up and want to save the world instead of like robbing banks? Why does he want to be good? Instead of bad. Like it's hard to understand that and until like we have these contrasts where his identity is shaken and then his parents remind him of who he is or trying to be and then you get to the end and him saying it is not the equivalent to the villain monologue but
Mm.
it's in a way to reflect back to Luther, what is going on inside of him. So I thought in that way it worked just very well. I then know why. This is a struggle for Superman. The what you touched upon, Ed, is something that is so important for so many people in this country and why we're so divided. This notion of identity, right?
Mm.
Who are we? Who are we as a people, as Americans? Who are we as people who vote? Are we left or right, Republicans or Democrats, progressives or independents or whatever? We hold on to that sense of identity because for many of us, especially in the West, it seems like life for us.
Mm.
However, the thing about identity is that most people in the West, I would say 99, I can give crazy numbers. I would say most people in the West don't really know who we are. Okay,
Mhm.
we're not dug down deeply enough. But we picked up these things, and that's why we hold on to them so tightly, so
Mm.
dearly. Because
Mm.
we don't understand what is inside.
Mm.
And that's what Superman is grappling with, right? He has the strength. He knows he is strong. He knows he is fast. He knows he has X-ray vision or laser eye. But does he know who he really is, his motivation, why he gets up in the morning,
Mm.
why he
Yeah.
does good, why he loves animals? And that's the key part.
Mm. I love that.
So my sister sent a text kind of in the middle of this, and I'm not sure if this exactly fits, but she noted was surprised about how you see Lex shedding a tear in that same scene,
Mhm.
and kind of what's up with
Mhm.
that. Like, is it simply that he just recognizes he's lost, um,
Mhm.
and all his plans have been foiled, or I don't know, play with it. Is there something deeper there that you know
Yeah.
Superman touched something of him of, what, there's more than just money and envy and power.
Right. Yeah, I it was an interesting choice to make his motivation so internally focused because, I mean, if you like Gene Hackman, like the OG Lex Luthor, as far as I'm concerned, was like, I want to own everything. It's pretty like standard, like supervillain stuff. And so, yeah, I love that thought that Superman is so earnest. And this kind of goes to one of my nuggets that we can talk about, perhaps just his fundamental decency and kindness. Um, that it was able to pierce that envious, supervillain exterior that a little bit of it leaks out literally on his face.
Mhm.
So Ed, did you have we could keep going on this, but if you had another kind of nugget that you wanted to, as we march around the circle here, what are
So,
you thinking about?
well, that actually reminded me of um, uh, another. So I thought about the assumptions we make,
Mm,
and um, in that conversation, in the just talking about Lex just there a minute ago, there was another one that popped into my mind, which is there are several characters in the movie that, I mean, they're not main characters, but they are key characters who the film initially portrays in one way and gives us this sense that they're fitting into these just easy stereotypes that we can do. So one of them was, uh, and this is the one that just popped into my mind as we were talking about Lex, was his girlfriend slash whatever, uh, Miss Tessmacher, because and they called her, was it Eve? I think
Eve,
first
yeah.
name, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, and I remembered from the original Superman, it was always Miss Tessmacher,
Hmm.
and so afterwards I pulled up IMDb. I'm like, oh yes, it is Eve Tessmacher. Okay, but um, the movie, most of it portrays her as just sort of like this, follower craving, Instagram type that um, is crazy shallow and so forth. And in fact, she's huge in what happens and the
Hmm.
brilliance of how she got sort of the information out,
Yeah.
which is profound. But also, there's that first conversation that Clark has with his parents or Ma and Pa Kent.
Hmm.
Um, and it's really portraying them initially as just kind of like country bumpkins. And
Hmm.
at first I was like, really? Like, come on. Like, you know, thinking of like the character again from the first Superman and what we saw of them. Um, but then later, when Superman goes back, you just see what incredible people they are and the
Yeah.
depth. And so um that how do we get past our initial assumptions
Mm.
of people
Yeah.
and how
Mhm.
people fit into, or people kind of fall into these molds that we're like, okay, well, that's what they are.
Yeah.
Um, and then you find out, oh, there's a lot more to them.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. That was also it must have been very deliberate on the filmmaker's part to, I mean, as far as I know, that kind of very thick accent that you hear them Ma and Pa Kent do is not like, I don't normally think of that as a Kansas
No,
a
no.
Kansas accent, right? That is not the Midwestern, even rural Midwestern that I understand. And so, yeah, that code's very unsophisticated, we'll put it that way.
Mhm.
But the wisdom that they impart, there's more, don't judge a book by its cover or a person by their accent, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. Any thoughts, Fu, on that before we move to something else?
Yeah, I think the whole idea of you can judge people and where they've fought into the hero spectrum, villain spectrum. Uh, yeah, and then we see that in the Justice Team, the Justice Group, the Justice League, whatever they're trying to figure out.
The
Right? They're
gang.
they're trying to, yeah, the gang. They're even trying to figure out who they are, and again, it does go back to how we want to put people into these neat categories, and we think we know who they are by their appearance, and yet there's so much more to explore. Yeah, I think
Mhm.
that's an important theme.
Mhm, mhm.
Mhm.
Well, and I mean, I'm just now realizing, I mean, Superman is an immigrant, Clark, he's an illegal alien, but he can hide that, um, which is a privilege that a lot of immigrants don't have. So, he was raised in Smallville by these parents, and maybe the people around him in his town knew he was adopted, but, he's in Metropolis living his life, and this connects a little bit to what I wanted to flag next is, it's very funny that so many, kind of right-wing bloviators were, like, talking about this woke movie and the immigrant thing and kindness, and now kindness is somehow woke. I don't get all that. And
Mhm.
then when I saw the movie, I was like, "Oh, this was before they had seen it, I presume." I'm assuming they even have seen it by now, but, what I was so struck by, there's so many great themes in the movie, but one is, and this is a spoiler for those of you who are on who haven't seen it yet, um, Superman's Krypton parents, Jor-El and Laura, is that his mother's name? Anyway, part of their message to him is, "We're sending you to Earth, and we want you to dominate there. We want you to take a harem, and we want you to subdue these people, and you can be all powerful doing that." And Superman has to reckon with that legacy, and so I'm sitting there in the theater going, "This is the legacy of white supremacy that all of us who occupy white bodies are invited," and I think it's an urgent task to reckon with that, right? And that so Superman has this kind of, wow, this is the literal legacy of my parents, my birth parents, and what do I do with that? And so, when sort of right-wing America is criticizing this movie for being, I was like, you didn't know the half of it. I mean, this is really an intense, right? And I love the conversation that Pa has with Clark and saying, you have a choice, right? And he has to reckon with that and come to some kind of peace with it, but he doesn't have to carry that forward. He can lay that down, and not in a simplistic way of like denying that it is real, but just simply to say, I can make a different choice now, and I have, and I mean, I may be taking it one too far to say, is there something reparative in the way that Superman looks out for the smallest and most insignificant creature, and all people? He wants everyone to thrive and to have, life, and so anyway, that legacy piece, especially for those of us who are in the kind of culture that's been dominant in our country for so long,
Yeah.
and has subdued and dominated. There's a lot to play with there. So, thoughts
Yeah.
from either of you on that?
Uh, no, that's really good, because you brought up a theme that uh, th- that is part of the history of the United States. This sort of idea of manifest destiny, right? And that's taken from interpretations of the Bible. The Genesis story of dominate, subdue creation,
Yeah.
right? So the purpose of humans, therefore, is to tame, dominate, subdue
Mhm.
all creation, and then that is mapped onto the history of the United States, where um, people came here to colonize the
Mhm.
natives and do just that. Right?
Yeah.
To and many white people propagated with the indigenous people of the U.S.
Mhm.
And so yeah, that uh, I'm glad you brought that up, Marianne, because I never thought of it that way, but yeah, that is part of Superman's heritage or what his parents wanted him to understand, but then he is this refugee in a way. The trauma of being othered, perhaps, just perhaps, gave him the ability to, or let me say this, because we could do many things with trauma, right? We could be the superhero or the supervillain, but at least his parents, and this is the other side of the dominance theme. His parents, those who he surrounded himself with, changed that perspective, right?
Mhm.
And he found that life was more interconnected
Yeah.
than that top down narrative.
Mhm.
And so the other theme of the movie is how the the Man of Steel Soups was just not this lone character, going through this movie, saving the world, et cetera, because that can be an easy trope. But he had his superhero team. He had Crypto. He had his
Yay,
parents. He had
crypto.
Lois. He had the Daily Planet. Like
Yeah.
all these people, he had the person. He had the falafel vendor. You know,
Yes.
all of these people were helping him, and so yes, he had the super strength and everything, but that's all us, right? Man, you have your special powers, and you have your special powers, but in order for us to save this world, save this planet, we have to realize we're all connected in what we do and our abilities. That's what's going to bring us forward.
Mm. Mm.
Mhm.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, the the scene, towards the end, he's in Metropolis trying to stop the rift and so forth, but just this very real, like, he couldn't be with, in the midst of the fictional countries. They forget the names of them, and yeah, he had to have others who were there to help
Mhm.
that, that situation. So, um, that I think was a really, I loved that it was,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
the something that I kept waiting for, and they didn't do it, and was that it would be revealed that, Luther's tech henchman, AI'd the rest of that message.
Mhm. Yeah.
That it wasn't that, they had that, um, but it just was, that eventually would be revealed, "Oh, yeah, that was just a deep fake
Mhm.
that he did," but they didn't go there,
Yeah.
either to say it deliberately that it was or that it wasn't. It kinda left that, and I think to, MaryAnn, the point that you raised about the legacy of it, there's a lot that, people will look at the same things and say, "Oh, yeah, no, it's not that." No, it is.
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
that it, and so whether or not, it is there, I mean, there is something to be said for Superman knowing that, yes, I have the power to do that,
Mhm.
but I'm gonna
Mm.
choose not,
Right.
and
Mhm.
I'm gonna choose a different way.
Yeah.
And that,
Well said.
to kinda throw in one other piece that we didn't have on our notes. One thing that Superman has had all the way along is this messianic sense.
Mhm. Mhm.
And here you've got him of, I am going to choose to let go of
Mm.
a legacy that is mine, and there's, to throw out, there's that debate sometimes of, like, the God of the New Testament looks very different from the God of the Old Testament.
Right.
And, is it that Jesus is saying, in the Gospels is saying, I'm going to leave behind
Mm.
that legacy of go into the land and wipe everybody out, and
Mhm.
I'm going to give you a new legacy of love one another.
Mm. Mm. Hmm.
So, just
Yeah.
throw that. Right.
Wow. Wow.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and, I mean, I'm just now thinking about the story of Jesus and the temptation, right? Of you have this power and you can exercise it.
Mhm.
And that's a little of what the parents, Jor-El and Laura kind of offer to Kal-El, their son, is, um, you can have security in that, um, and not be vulnerable if you just take over this planet with the yellow sun that gives you this power. And, but because of because of Jesus' fundamental understanding of his mission, he does not accept those temptations, and same with Clark slash Superman. He's, it's unthinkable to him, but he does have to kind of wrestle with the fact that this is part of his heritage, or
Uh-huh.
his history, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Any,
and
yeah, go ahead.
no,
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
just gonna just add, and it's not the heritage of all Kryptonians, right? Because
Mhm.
his cousin, it had not informed him of that, because his cousin maybe was raised in another way, where
Great
her
point.
parents did not,
Great point.
and
Yeah.
probably did not believe in that, and so
Mhm.
she didn't, come in and say, "Hey, that's full of it," or
Yes.
because we're all dominators, we're all,
Mhm.
Kryptonian supremacists. We all should take over. But, yeah, she didn't propagate that myth, because it would have been a different movie if she did, right? So not all Kryptonians are the same. It's just
Yeah.
his parents
Yeah.
were like that, and
Right.
so the question, I'm curious, and probably you answered it. Both of you answered it. Uh, then what would have been the difference if it were AI and it were
Mm.
something? So
Mm.
if James Gunn, even though James Gunn has said many times, that was not a deep fake. That was, that was part of the story.
Mm.
Would that have made a difference?
Mm. And, I mean, and a further question is, what if the whole message had been present and had
Mhm.
not been corrupted so that he had heard that all along?
Yeah,
That's a fascinating kind of sliding doors moment too.
Mhm.
yeah.
I do, I mean, I
Just
thank you for,
just
yeah. Yeah,
just
go ahead.
watch The Boys.
Ah,
Just watch
okay.
The Boys. That's that version of Superman.
Oh, yes, okay. Duly noted. We'll have to add that, Ed. Ed, have you
Mhm.
watched that show?
I haven't. I haven't.
Okay, we'll add it to our pop culture pastors hour. Um, and I'm so glad you brought up Supergirl, because that's another dimension. I mean, yeah, she didn't seem to have the go dominate, and take a harem, whatever the female male equivalent of that is. Um, but she does have, um there's different aspects of kind of white supremacy culture, and there's a little bit of the, like, I'm above all this and I don't need to concern myself with the, which, neither good nor bad. I mean, like, that just kind of is a part of her character, and maybe we'll learn more about her, but it's like, I see a lot of that too, of like, I'm just gonna check out and have fun and let the world just take care of itself. And perhaps with some maturity, she'll come to a different, understanding of her mission, or maybe she's just gonna have, fun with it. But, my responsibility gene is very strong, so I kinda go, "Come on, get in the game a little bit," you know? So any final thoughts, from any of you, as we come up to our full on hour that,
Well,
has been so fun? Yeah.
there is a choice, one more choice on that. And again, massive spoiler alert for the very end of the film. w- What Superman chooses to sort of see as the robots are healing him,
Mhm.
that it's the home movies from
Yeah.
Smallville. And one of the podcasts I listened to about the movie brought this up. And it was one of those things that, like, I think unconsciously I was picking up, but he called it out. in this podcast, or she called it out, I forget which one it was, that none of those home movies did it show like his dad, lifting him up as a baby and then like Superman kind of going, "Woo," like carts
Right.
flying off or something like that.
Yes.
It was all just normal little kid stuff,
That's right.
and with parents, and
Mhm.
that there was this. He's making a very deliberate choice, not just of who he wants to be, but what is his foundational what is his foundation? Is it going to
Mhm.
be the go get your harem dominate, or is it going to be this family that showed him this love
Yeah.
and acceptance from day one?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
I thought that was absolutely beautiful at the end.
Yeah.
Mm.
Agree. How about you, Fu? Any final thoughts before we close up?
I mean, I'm really I was very glad to watch this movie. I was really taken away with James Gunn's approach. I've seen all of his movies, and the last his last movie with Rocket.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians
Yeah,
3.
yeah,
Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, just really melted my heart. And just to see what he's doing with Superman, it was just amazing. Again, I never really could identify with the character of Superman because he was just uh, uh, s- yeah, too stoic, too super powered,
Mhm.
and the Batman character was always something just more fun, right? He could get beat up. He could, but to start out a movie with Superman getting his ass handed to him,
Right.
yeah, that was something. That was a
Yeah.
bold move,
Mhm.
and and that's what I really appreciate about this movie to show the humanity, to put the man back in Superman, right? And
Mm.
to as that human point, and so we all have all three have a theological background, and so that incarnational part, is more manifested in this movie than
Mhm.
in the previous Superman movies. And so, yeah, that's really what I appreciate. It's that exploration of humanity that is great. It's what, in a lot of ways, it is what makes the divine aspect, the super aspect, even more interesting, right? Because
Mhm.
because uh, divinity alone and superpower alone is not that interesting.
Hmm.
All being all powerful, all knowing, and it's not that interesting unless the humanity is meshed with it, right? And it can be explored with it, and then we could see what difference that makes, because then we have the
Yeah.
temptations, then we have the exploration of identity, then we have the tug and pull of what we could really be on the inside. So yeah,
Mm. Yeah. Oh, I love
much to
that.
say, much to say,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
Well, and
great.
that's
thank
yeah,
you.
and
Mhm.
there's a great one of my video gaming websites I go to actually had an article about why hasn't there been any good Superman games? Because
Mm.
there's been some great Batman games
Mm.
and some pretty good X-Men games and stuff like that. And part of it is in a game, your character sometimes has to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
Mhm.
exactly.
if your character that you're playing as can't be shot, can't be killed, can't be, like none of it, that's not a very fun game.
Mm. Yes. Right. I
not
love that.
Yeah.
not a good
So,
story. Not a
yeah.
good story.
Yes. Yeah. Well, both
Yeah.
of these things are making me I mean, like, as Christians, I mean, our foundational story is the Easter story and the hope that we know in the resurrection of Christ. Yet, right, and the scandal of death being defeated, and yet, the older I get, and the more I kind of live with these stories in our faith tradition, I mean, it really is the incarnation, as you said, Fu,
Mhm.
that is truly. I mean, you can't have one without the other, right? The resurrection story isn't possible unless you have God as a human being. But the fact that yeah, and a sovereign God becomes human, that's the really scandalous, interesting, like narratively interesting, theologically interesting, spiritually interesting. That 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 being shares our humanity is beautiful, and that's a story worth telling and evoking even in these superhero stories. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Good
good
stuff.
stuff.
Awesome.
Well, thank you all for joining us for this wonderful conversation. And Fu, what a joy to have you with us. And
Mhm.
everyone, I will link to both of these wonderful gentlemen, as I always do, if you catch the replay. And I think any one of the three of you can also post that on your own site. I think that's
Yep.
how this Substack thing works. But I'll share Fu's link to his wonderful article that came out this morning about Superman. And also, congratulations on the paperback version of the book coming out on in just a couple of days. And
Yeah.
tell us the name of the book again, and I'll also link to that in my write up.
Yeah, it's called Jesus and Buddha Talk about desire, suffering, and happiness. And right now, just to give anyone who wants to give me some support in the form of encouragement, I'm working on my third book called Scandalously called In Their Image: How Atheists and Evangelicals Create the Same God. And so,
Ooh, I'm gonna have to talk to you more about that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Ah,
so, but thank you so much,
yes.
Ed, MaryAnn. It's been an honor, pleasure
Awesome.
to be here with
Thank
y'all.
you so much. Fu also does book coaching, so if anybody is just been dying to, you got a book inside of you and are trying to figure out how to make that happen, contact him. He is a, we'll call you a book midwife. How about?
There you go. That's right.
Book
So,
I love
doula.
that.
Yeah,
yeah,
Book doula.
doula,
bring your book.
exactly.
I'll bring your book into this world,
There you
Love it.
go.
and
There
I
you
treat it
go.
with care.
There you go. I love it. Well, thank you both. And thank you all for being part of this conversation, and have a wonderful day. And we'll see you next time.
Yep. See
Yeah.
ya.
Take
Bye-bye.
Bye.
care.
Blessings.
Bye. You too.